Hello, I'm Cathy.
I'm Rachel, and this is Lunabelle Book Club.
Why have we got the giggles already? This is not good.
Maybe we could both say one word at a time.
No.
We thought that we would try something a little bit different for this video. So for the next 2 weeks, we are going to swap the way that we read. So we both have very different reading habits, and
We thought it'd be an interesting experiment to swap reading habits and see how we find it. So we're going to explain a little bit about how we each read. And then for 2 weeks, we're going to read how the other reads. And we'll film little diary entries. And then we'll do a recap to say how we've got on.
yeah, maybe we will prefer each other's style and then forever change. And then Lunabird will never be the same.
Wow.
So let's start with how we read.
Okay, how I read is this.
I think the way that we've prepared for this video is kind of symbolic of how we read. Cathy has made a list. She's written a list down, and I'm like, yeah, I know how I read in my head. That's fine.
How I read is I will read one physical book at a time, and I'll read the whole book before I start a new book. Apart from, I will also have an audiobook on the go too that I tend to listen to whilst I'm driving or doing a job to keep me entertained. And that's it. So I have one physical book at a time and one audiobook at a time. How does that compare to you?
Not like that at all. I have multiple books on the go at the same time. And there's no real rhyme or reason as to which one I read. And sometimes I'll start a book and then I'll start reading another book and I'll finish that other book and then go back to that other book. Depends how I'm feeling. And sometimes my book is too big to take out and about, so I'll take a smaller book and I'll read that book. But then when I get back, the big book is the book that I'm really reading, and the smaller book is just my out and about book. So it's very circumstantial.
Okay.
But I would never just read one book at a time.
I'm gonna have to think about how am I physically going to do this?
I think pick a big book, pick a small book, pick a non-fiction book, and then just pick 2 extra random books that you could pick up whenever you wanted. It just depends how you feel like.
Okay. Okay.
Hey.
Another way in which I read
Yeah.
is that I will pick the next book on my TBR randomly. So every book has an equal chance of being read next, and then I'll use a random number generator to pick the book.
Okay. So I think I'm gonna have to give all of my unread books a number before we even start.
Yeah.
To pick the. I think the way that I am gonna approach this is that the books that are currently in my reading pile, my actively reading pile, I think I'm just going to ignore them for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They don't exist
to
this challenge, Rachel. So I'm going to randomly pick a book off my TBR using a random number generator. I'll stick with the audiobook that I have.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what comes next. We'll see how many times I have to do that.
Yeah. How do you choose which books you're reading?
There's no rhyme or reason. I'm like, yeah, I'll read that.
Okay. To be fair, my TBR is quite small at the moment, so I might have to read all of them to keep up with what you read normally.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you are.
Yeah.
I just read what I want when I want, and sometimes that means that I don't read at all. So maybe you'll have days when you just don't read at all and you'll have to do something else. Generally, I always listen to part of my audiobook in the day though, so you can always do that. But maybe you can flip a coin.
Yeah.
If it's heads, you're allowed to read.
Or...
If it's tails, you're not allowed to read.
Okay.
And then roll a dice and that'll tell you which book you're going to read at that point at that point of the day.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, because I can't do it based on how I feel, because I'll feel like I want to read one book at a time. I have to pretend. I have to like somehow manufacture the Rachel randomness. Okay, yeah, I like that. Fine. Also, do you listen to an audiobook as you're going to sleep?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. So you have to do that.
I have to try and do that too.
I set a 15-20 minute timer.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that means that when I next come to the audiobook, I go back to where I started from.
Yeah.
But I do have it on while I'm asleep. But that's more a sleep aid than a reading thing.
Okay.
I think. So
I'll try. Maybe if I just listen to it before I fall asleep.
Yeah.
I can't fall asleep accidentally. I have to really try to fall asleep, so I don't think that'll work for me.
Okay.
Like, yeah, if I don't concentrate on falling asleep, I don't.
Have you ever tried falling asleep with audio in the
no,
background?
maybe I should.
I think you should give it a try.
Yeah.
Because the way that it works for me, if I'm not listening to something, my brain is just thinking.
Yeah.
But if my brain is focused on listening to that, then my brain doesn't think, and then my brain, like...
Yeah, I have to tell myself stories
collapses.
to fall asleep, so maybe listening to a story will work. This could be intriguing.
If you just close your eyes and just let your brain focus on listening, your body just drifts off.
Maybe this will be a game changer for me.
Yeah. Maybe then you won't have to focus on getting to sleep.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, because sometimes my thoughts are overpowering the listening, but...
Yeah, I think this next one.
So you don't listen to audiobooks when you fall asleep? I can listen to podcasts instead, that's fine. That's not going
Okay.
to affect... That's not going to affect my sleeping habits.
Yeah, if you need to sleep.
I'll listen to something else.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'll put on a video of somebody knitting.
Like, don't not sleep for the challenge. It's not worth it.
Do you have set times in the day when you read?
Not religiously, but by habit. I tend to read, like, either at or just after meal times.
Okay.
So, like, if there's time in the morning and I've had breakfast, I'll try and read a chapter. And then at lunchtime, if I don't have to socialise, I will read. And same, like, after tea, I'll try and get another chapter in. And then I tend to read just before I go to sleep.
Okay.
And if I'm really enjoying the book, I'll read as much as humanly possible and ignore every other responsibility. So
Okay.
if I'm enjoying the book, I tend to read the reading instead of other stuff.
Okay. See, when I was younger, and kind of now, depending on what I'm reading, if I'm reading before bed and it's exciting, I'll just read.
Just keep reading.
Yeah. Do you set yourself a specific time?
No, if I'm really enjoying the book, I might read quite late, but also because I'm old, I do sometimes go to bed really early and read early and fall asleep early. So like sometimes I put Ola to bed and then like that's finished about 8:30, 9:15. I think, is it worth going downstairs and putting the telly on and putting the lamp on, or shall I just get into bed and read? And sometimes I just get into bed and read.
Okay.
I'm not obliging you to follow that, because that's more of a bedtime routine than a reading routine.
I'm just trying to work how I'll stop myself from staying up till 3 a.m. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No!
can't relate.
No, I will definitely fall asleep before 3 a.m.
Once I'm doing something, if I'm enjoying it,
You're locked in.
locked in.
If I'm reading a book and I don't think it's good, I'm not having fun, I don't read the book anymore. I put it down and I never return to it again and I read something else.
That makes me feel physically ill. We talked about this before and I said, well, maybe I just will DNF it for that 2 weeks and then it'll go back into my TBR. But now that I'm thinking about it, if I am committing to this video, I'll go and put it in a little lending library. If I'm not liking it, I'm going to commit to your style of reading and I will get rid of the book.
This is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just get to pick another book to read. See? That's the reward. That's the reward for DNFing. And then the flip side of this is you don't DNF books.
No.
So for the purpose of this 2 weeks, I'm not DNFing. But I might put things to the back burner of what I'm reading. I might swap which of the 5 books I'm reading more.
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we have said that yours is going to be randomised by a coin and a dice, so...
Yeah, oh yeah, that's true.
So that means if you pick up a book that you would normally DNF,
I have to continue.
you have to read, I don't know, a chapter.
Yeah.
And then you can stop reading.
And I might, since you're making such a firm commitment, I'll make a firm commitment that eventually I will read all the books that I pick up. So if there's one that I pick up that I would normally DNF, I will eventually finish that book.
Really?
Yeah.
You're going to take that out of the video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to match your commitment levels. We'll let you know how we get on.
Do you remember when we sat down and we said, this will only take us 5 minutes? We spoke for 16 and a half minutes.
Okay, let's stop. That's enough, right?
Yeah. Tune in about 5 minutes in the video where we tell you how it went. It is the 14th of July. It is, I've just dropped a dice. It is the day before Cathy and I are starting our Swapping Reading Styles Challenge, and I have organised all my books to the ones that are being picked for this challenge. I've counted them. I have 99 books on this shelf that could be read, that are on my TBR. I have taken out the slightly horror themed ones because I want to save them for October time, if I read them at all. So I have 99, including
An Echo of Things to Come. That's not what it's called. The Light of All That Falls, because genuinely, if I don't put that in the lineup, then I'm never going to read it ever again. And then I thought, if I roll 100, I'll pick a book off my Kindle to read. Anyway, so I'm going to roll a d10, and that will decide what book I'm going to read. Anyway, let's have a look at the book, shall we? So ignore the Book of Queer Prophets and Oathbringer, they're just there as storage. And ignore the Odyssey and Vincent van Gogh, they're just there as storage. So we've got all of those ones. And then we swap round to the side of the top. And then we start at maybe like 40 for this one. I can't remember the exact numbers, but here are all the books we've got to go at. So shall we roll some dice? Let's see what we get. What number is that? 91. Oh, I've got to count 91. That's such a big number to count. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 68, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. Hello, book I will be reading if I can get you out of the bookcase. This is actually the last book I bought. It's Audre Lorde's Your Silence Will Not Protect You. I've already read like 2 poems and 2 essays out of that, so that'll be fun. Very nice.
That was Ola doing a leaf drop. Ola's with us. You want to say hi?
Hello there, Mr. and myself.
I filmed 2 clips that have failed completely. I accidentally filmed them in slow motion. They have no audio and they're completely useless. So here I am filming about a week after our Swapping Reading Habits challenge, and I'm going to try and recreate the clips that I lost. So the first clip was filmed the night before the challenge started, and it was me explaining what books I was going to read and how I was going to read like Rachel. So first of all, let me talk you through the books I lined up for the reading challenge. The first one is Oathbringer, which I'll put somewhere on the screen here. Oh, thanks, Ola. Which I now don't have a copy of anymore because I've given it back to Rachel. The second was How to Be Pretty Though Plain. This was my non-fiction selection. It is a beauty and style fashion guide, written I think in the late 1800s, and it's quite amusing. Ola's dropping more seeds and stuff in front of the camera.
Pat, pat, well done.
The second book was Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. The next book after that was The 10th Kingdom. This is a nice chunky one, so if I was meant to read this on one day, I'd only be able to read it at home and not have it as a travel book. And then the last one was The Book Eaters. So quite a nice selection of books, I feel. And then the system we came up with was, because I really needed to read Oathbringer by the end of the challenge because we were going to film a video about it, we changed the system slightly for me. So we decided that each day I would roll a die. If it landed on 1 or 2, that was a 0 reading day. I would not read on that day at all. Oh, Ola's bringing the cat over.
Yeah.
If I rolled a 3 or a 4, that would be an Oathbringer day, and that was like my main book to read. If I rolled a 5 or a 6, that meant I was to read one of these books, and then I'd roll a die again to decide which of the books I would read. And that was our system. We also agreed that because Oathbringer needed to be finished by the time the challenge was over, that on the last day of the reading challenge, that I would devote that completely to Oathbringer. And no matter what, I would stay up late and finish Oathbringer.
It's day 4 of Cathy and Rachel swap reading styles for a fortnight challenge, and I will confess it's not going brilliantly for me. There are several reasons for this. The first one being that I am ill. I don't know if you can tell based on my voice, you probably can. Additionally, normally I eat lunch alone at work because by the time I get to the lunchroom, everyone else is back on their shift working. So normally I would eat lunch alone and I would have half an hour to just sit and read a book. But it's turned out this week that has not happened at all. I've been with people every day, and I'm not a person who can just like sit and ignore them if I'm in the room with them. Apart from there's one person who we will just sit in silence with, so I would be fine reading with them, but I haven't been eating lunch with them. I've been eating lunch with people that I've been talking to. So that's the second reason. The third reason is that it's the last week before the summer holidays, and I've been making end of year gifts for my children. I decided to make them all not bracelets, key rings. I'll show you the one I made my colleague. I'm really proud of how they've turned out, but they have been very time consuming, a lot more time consuming than I thought they would be. So that's taken up my evenings. And then we also had the end of year work party this week as well. So I haven't had any time in the evening to read because I've been busy doing this. Like I've made literally, I think I've made 43 of these and 2 bracelets for my colleagues' children. So like I did not realize how much time that would take up. And then because I'm ill, by the time I get into bed, I'm like absolutely wiped out and I just fall asleep listening to Oathbringer still. So I am still listening to Oathbringer, but the actual reading challenge isn't going amazingly. The only time I've had to read is breakfast, and I have read every breakfast, which I don't normally do, but other than that, I'm really slacking.
Hello, I'm back again. Okay, this is me trying to recreate my midpoint recap. So I think midway through the reading challenge, I'd actually started all of the books. So you can see that you can see bookmarks in these because I did end up reading a little bit of every book throughout the reading challenge. I had about 3 non-reading days, which was frustrating. I made very slow progress through Oathbringer. And then with each of these, I read at least a chapter or 2. But the main one I landed on my reading other books day was The Book Eaters. And this was one of those where if I'd been reading on my own, according to my own habits, I probably would have DNF'd this in the first chapter because the writing style was, it just pitched a little bit like YA to me, and I don't really get on with YA that much. But because I was reading like Rachel, I stuck with it, and actually once I finished the challenge, and I'd finished Oathbringer, I came back and I finished this book because this was the one that intrigued me the most. And it actually turns out the reasons why I thought it was reading a bit like YA was that the main character was meant to be 29, but she acted quite immaturely. Her narration was quite immature and...
Emergency AC drop.
It read a bit immature and adolescent, but when I got further into the book, I realised that there was reasons why this particular 29-year-old was immature in some aspects and why she had been a bit stuck in an adolescent frame of mind. And I actually ended up really enjoying this book. So this was one of the things that surprised me in this reading challenge. So yeah, about midway through the challenge, I had read a little bit of every book. I had swapped a few times and it was going okay, but I hadn't really got into any one particular book. And I was getting more and more worried that I wouldn't finish Oathbringer.
It's day 11 of Cathy and I's book swap, and to be fully honest with you, I still haven't finished this book that was my first book in it, but I have read some every day, and I think it's not a book that I want to just force myself to read, if that makes sense. Like, I don't just want to sit down and read it because I have to. I want to give myself time to actually digest what it is I'm reading. And I have read some every day. I've read one of the essays every day. I started reading some of the poems every day, but then after about the 4th or 5th essay, I thought I want to read the poems having digested all of the prose. So I'm hoping to have it finished by the time Cathy and I meet up to talk about our experience, but so far I am still powering through the first book.
It's my last day of reading like Rachel. Tomorrow we're filming a vlog on Oathbringer part 2. I have 220 pages left to read and I gotta read it all today, and I've got people coming around this evening, so when I get home from work I need to tidy the house, having people over, and then I think I'm going to be up all night finishing the book. Good morning. I finished Oathbringer. I stayed up till 1:15 reading this book, and man, the last like 150 pages of this book are amazing. It was so cool. I can't wait to talk about it more with Rachel today. And that brings me to the end of reading like Rachel. I will say, like, I have not stayed up late into the night finishing a book under the covers since I can't even remember. It's been a very long time since I stayed up that late just to finish a book, and I'd forgotten how fun it was. Like, especially a book as exciting as Oathbringer. Just like, there was so much going on. It was an absolute whir. It was addictive reading anyway, and to just like plant myself and go, I'm not stopping, I'm just going to keep going, I'm going to finish this book tonight. Actually, that was so much fun, and I haven't done it in a really long time because, you know, I'm old now, so I normally need my sleep, and I normally choose sleep over everything else, but, you know, as a one-off, to stay up late reading a book into the night was actually really good fun. So no regrets about that at all. Okay, hello! We have come to the end of our reading challenge. So I guess first of all, roughly summary, how did you get on with it?
We perhaps did this at the wrong time for me, because the first week I only really read at breakfast, because at dinner time, I'm normally by myself at dinner time, so I read at dinner time, but at dinner time this week, every dinner I was in the staff room with someone else. So I felt it was a bit rude to just get my book out and read.
Yeah.
But other than that, I was also ill, which made me feel not like reading. And I know that I was supposed to be emulating your reading habits, but just didn't really work. But I only read one book, and I feel it was a book that I haven't even finished it yet. But I think I was taking my time with it. It was a book that I wanted to take my time with, so I felt I didn't want to just sit and read it, because I felt like that was not really reading the book in the way that I'm supposed to. But then, because
I take it in.
Yeah. So if I had not been reading like you, I would have read another book in the other time, so that I had a specific time when I was thinking about the book I am reading, and another time to just read. Yeah. If that makes sense. But I enjoyed it. I'm really sad that I only got to roll my dice once. So I think I might, if I don't have a book that I specifically want to read, I think I will roll the dice and just see what it pulls out for me. I felt that my approach to reading was more calm, and that knowing that the reason that I wasn't reading at that point was because I wanted to give the book more space felt more freeing, I suppose. So I did read some of the book every day. Yeah. Which I think is more than I have done in the past. And yeah, I think I enjoyed being in your head, even though I didn't always read when you would have read. I enjoyed being in your head. What about you? How did it go?
I think, so I ended up like swapping books, I think about 5 times. And I think I had about 3 days where I didn't read at all.
Ooh.
Except for audiobooks.
Yeah, that's fine.
I found listening to audiobooks at night, I really enjoyed that. I couldn't figure out how to set it up so that it would stop at a certain time. And I didn't quite dare to actually try and fall asleep whilst listening to it. But I did, like...
I'll show you after.
Thank you.
I'll show you after.
I did make it like the last thing I did before I fell asleep. I like to lay to bed, lights off, earphones in, and I listened to like a chapter of the audiobook. And that was a really nice experience to like, I don't think I ever listened to audiobooks without lots of other stuff going on. Mm-hmm. So to just be there and just be listening to the book and nothing else, I actually really enjoyed that. The only time I didn't do that was when the book got to a really sad bit and I didn't want to read something sad happening just before I fell asleep, so I skipped it. That's fair. But I really enjoyed that. Swapping books.
You hated it.
I didn't like swapping books that much. Except, so yeah, I didn't, I liked sticking in one book, and I probably still like sticking with one book at a time. Except, so this morning when I'd finished Oathbringer, I was like, I can read what I want now. and I picked up one of the books that I'd already started to continue reading. Actually, that was an easier transition to make. Because normally when I finish a book, if you've only been reading that book for like 2 or 3 weeks and you put it down, you're like, oh, I'm not ready to dive into a new relationship with a book. I take a little bit of processing time. But if you already have one that you've begun, it's easy to jump into.
Mm-hmm.
So that was easier. But I think in general I do like reading one book at a time.
I will say, because you mentioned audiobooks as well, the evening of the last week of term as well, I was making like little key rings for all my children. So I spent like 3 hours every evening making these stupid key rings. So I listened to a lot of Oathbringer doing that as well.
Oh,
so it wasn't just one book that I was looking at, but yeah, so I will nip that in there.
And that's how I listen to audiobooks too. I do it when there's a job to do. So yeah, that was good. Do you think this experiment will change any of your reading habits?
I will. It's not going to stop me reading more than one book at once, but I think I will be more persistent with a book. Like maybe I'll just read 2 or 3 books at once. And one of them, I enjoyed the book that I have been reading. I enjoy sitting with it for a little bit of every day. So I think maybe I will have a book that will take me longer to read, that I do want to think about more, as well as maybe a novel that I'm just gonna sit and read for like 3 hours, because I don't need to think about it too much, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed the repeated visiting of the book every day, which makes me wonder why I stopped doing that. Yeah, I think yeah. What about you?
I think listening to audiobooks at night would be something I won't do every night, but I think doing that as a relaxation thing, I would love to do that again, because that felt really nice. And I think listening to my mood with reading, because I think you're a mood reader, I also think that's helpful, and you don't give up on books as quickly as I do. So
were there any books that you were reading that you were like, I want to put this down?
Yeah, so one of the books I picked up reading, like within the first 2 pages, I was like, this reads, it read like a YA book, and it just felt very young. I wasn't into it, but because I mean like Rachel reads, I persevered. And actually I want to see it through now. Like, there's enough interesting stuff going on that I think it's one of those that I will read it and go like, yeah, that was alright. Probably not going to be a favourite, but good enough to enjoy and see where it goes.
I'm a bit sad that I didn't have a book that I did DNF, because I obviously I am still reading the book. I am enjoying it. I want to keep reading it. So I think if I'd maybe started with a different book that I didn't like, I would have got through more. But it just so happens that the book that I was reading needed more thinking space.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You wanted to like pick one up, DNF it, and then get to choose.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So maybe I think once I finish this book that I'm reading, I will read the Lacanius trilogy, but then I'm gonna adopt your method of rolling dice, because
it's fun, isn't it?
I love rolling dice. And yeah, just be a bit more structured in my approach to reading, I think.
Okay, cool. So that was our challenge of swapping reading habits with one another. Have you ever experimented with your reading habits?
Maybe you could try reading like me or Cathy.
Oh yeah!
We release videos every Friday, so tune in next week for something new. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!
It'll do.
Every time I'm like, hello, no, you start.